Welcome to the Mindful Movement Show. We're your hosts, Tony and Amanda Johnson.
This is a podcast dedicated to helping moms and dads heal their hurts, transform their health from the inside out, and become the best people, partners, and parents they can possibly be.
Our mission is to normalize struggle and profile stories of resilience, character building, and the process of healing and becoming.
In Season 1, we spotlight healers from a variety of modalities who are also parents. We hope you enjoy the show.
Good morning and happy Mindful Monday, Mindful and Fit family. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Mindful Movement Show. This week, we have another great coach on the show to share her wisdom and experience with you. Sarah Stack is a mother, wife, and strength and flexibility coach with a specialization in nutrition. Her mission is to empower young girls from all different backgrounds to promote play that fosters a bond and celebrates the shared experiences of training for and playing sports. We're grateful to share a conversation with Sarah that focuses on co-creating family values and philosophical approaches and meeting our kids where they are and growing with them. We'll then discuss nutrition, flexibility, and strength training, and the reason why it is so important for women of any age to incorporate a comprehensive training program. Finally, we'll zoom in to focus on why it's important to promote healthy behaviors for young women in our society while giving them tools to grow into the strongest, most empowered versions of themselves they can be.
Welcome to the Mindful Movement Show, Sarah.
It's our pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, pretty good.
How are you doing?
Can't complain.
Right on.
Good.
Good. Yeah.
And where are you residing? Where do you live?
I am born and raised, live in New Orleans my entire life. New Orleans, Louisiana.
That's awesome. As you might know, we have lived in coastal Texas, very near you, for the last 2.5 years, and are excited to get back there at some point soon.
Yeah.
So our
Definitely.
show always begins with the same fundamental premise, and that is that our experiences shape who we are and how we show up in the world. Can you please share whatever you're comfortable sharing about some of the formative experiences that shape how you show up in the world as a person, parent, partner, and coach?
Definitely. And that's a fantastic question, actually. So I think like most people, their parents shape them, right? And I grew up in a 2-parent household. My parents have been married for, almost 50 years. I had a very strong female role model growing up. My parents really didn't subscribe to too much of the traditional male versus female role. They kind of were all in it together, like a true partnership. We see that more now, but I don't know if that was necessarily as popular, 43 years ago. But she was very, she's always just kind of like, if you want to get something done, you just have to do it yourself. Was not the kind of wait around and let the man kind of take care of it situation. She was a full-time stay-at-home mom, but my dad is also self-employed. He's a musician. I said I grew up in New Orleans. He's a New Orleans musician. He actually just retired from Tulane University. He's been on faculty there for probably close to 30 years in the music department. So those are just some some prominent things in my life, was seeing a female role model in a partnership marriage and watching my dad basically just do what his heart says is the right thing for him to do, and watching him build a career and do whatever it took to put my sister and me through private school and, work really, really hard. So those are some things that just kind of are part of who I am because I witnessed that with them.
That's amazing. And so how would you say that's affected you? Like, how would you say seeing those relationships translated into who you are as a parent and a person?
I always felt like it was perfectly fine to just want to do something, like it just like, I never felt like I was limited in what was possible being a female, I guess. And because I always did, even though my mom was a stay-at-home mom, she ran the show, basically. And that was fine. There wasn't that weird dynamic, male versus female, this or that. They were true partners. And my husband and I have a similar relationship like that now. I was a stay-at-home mom for 9 years, and, he still is the majority breadwinner in our house, our family. But, it's like we're partners. So I think seeing that growing up was something that I sought for myself in choosing and finding, a partner And we've been married for 17 years, so made a good choice.
Yeah.
And you spoke to so many important themes that I hope that we can touch on throughout the episode, which is limitless possibility, hard work, following your heart, and then breaking through traditional stereotypical norms or understandings of what is possible in your case for being a woman, but also in any other boxes people tend to put us in.
Sure, absolutely.
And so hopefully we can touch on some of those important themes, and I think we will. In our first segment, we want to talk about your family specifically. You've shared a little bit about your husband. Congratulations on 17 years. That's an impressive accomplishment in this day and age. But can you talk more about what your family looks like and your journey as a mom?
Sure. So again, my husband and I, we've been married for 17 years, together almost 20. And we met in graduate school. And we have 2 children. We have a 13-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. That's our little core little family. Yeah, I mean, we're here in New Orleans, and he has his job, and I was a stay-at-home mom for 9 years with our two kids. Decided to kind of slowly dip my toe into the workforce slowly a few years ago, and here we are.
And what a series of accomplishments you've made. I know we talked in the series of planning this episode about some of the things that you had to unlearn in order to grow into your role of being a mom, especially with a bold, courageous daughter as a firstborn, which is something we share.
Definitely.
And so I'm really curious if you can tell us more about that, and we could dig deep into what you learned as you grew into your role of being a mom.
Sure. So like I mentioned, that my parents were obviously a major influence in me, just watching their relationship and the way that they raised my sister and myself. I'm the oldest. I have a younger sister. And one of the things that I had to come to realize is that was wonderful. And it worked for them, and it worked for us, and it worked for our family when I was growing up. But sometimes it's okay to do things differently with your own family. Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I came to realize, that, like I would talk to my husband, and I would discuss and talk about, well, when I was a kid, this is the way things went. And I would say, oh, well, we did it this way. Well, there's not one right way. But I think that part of the way society kind of moves and grows and progresses is that you take this part here that worked really well from my childhood, and this over here from his childhood, and the way his parents parented, he and his brother and his sister. And you kind of put it together, and you form your own approach to parenting your children, because each child is different. I mean, raising my sister and me is a totally different situation than what my husband and I are doing, raising our daughter and our son in 2023 with a whole different set of issues and this and that. So that was one of the things that we had to kind of unlearn. It's like, it's okay. While what we experienced, it was positive and wonderful and worked out wonderfully for us, worked out great, that it's okay to do it differently. And that's really, it's not like it's saying anything negative about how you were parented by choosing to do it differently. I understand, like, some people may not have had a very positive experience growing up when it comes to the type of parenting that they received. And so they might seek out, I'm going to do things differently. And again, like, that's wonderful. Great. Break those cycles. But I mean, for people like myself, where that wasn't the case, it was almost like a realization, like, oh, it's okay. It doesn't mean that what happened in my childhood was in any way wrong. It just meant that doesn't apply to what my husband and I are doing with our two kids. So
I'm curious, because I do definitely we want to touch on, what that partnership piece looks like in parenting. But first, I'm curious if you can speak to, especially having a strong, independent little girl, what has that parenting looked like for you? I mean, what can you share with our listeners in terms of, like, what does that relationship look like, and what have you learned from it?
Yes, I have a very strong-willed, independent 13-year-old daughter. And I'll tell you what, this is really funny. When I was pregnant for her, I was planning to do a natural birth. And we went through all the classes and read all the books and did all the stuff. And as I was getting closer to her due date, turns out she was in a Frank breech position, had herself wedged in there. And, my doctor, he delivered me and has so much experience, has seen it all. he told me, he's like, this baby's not turning. She's not turning, like I promise you. So I had to schedule a C-section for her. And one of our friends at the time told me, said, well, now you know who's really in charge. And I was like, that was so prophetic. That has rung true in my ears for the last 13 years because it's really true. It's like she came her way, she did it her way. She was not budging. And that has been consistent with her. So it does take a lot to raise a strong-willed child. And I think in particular a daughter, especially for me as the mom, you have to toe that line of allowing that, not allowing it to an extent, but also knowing when you have to put your foot down and say, okay, like, no, this is not going to go, because you don't want to kill their spirit, right?
Yeah.
There's something to that, but at the same time, like the limits have to exist. But parenting a strong-willed child versus I have a not strong-willed child. Also, my son is not. He's just like, whatever, I'm good. I'm like, dude, don't do this. And he's like, okay.
Okay.
And I'm just kind of like, really? Is that okay? You didn't fight me on this in any way? It's a completely different animal. So it's important to just like, it's a partner, like you and your husband, you've got to be on the same page, your partner in parenting, well, whoever that is, if it's your husband, your spouse, whatever, you have to be on the same page. Like you are a united front. And it's like, sometimes you have to like plan, like, how are we going to tackle this? Because those strong-willed kids are typically really, really bright and they can see those holes. But they're wonderful though, because like I say, they're gonna light the world on fire.
Absolutely.
So it's a huge
responsibility. Take it down with them, right?
Yeah, or take it down with them, right? But it's a huge. I view it as a huge responsibility to try to intentionally parent a strong-willed child in a way that will guide them. And the other thing is you have to really like get to know them, like know what works with them. Know that, for example, you may tell them something, they don't want to hear it because they don't want to take advice because they want to know it. They want to know. They want to already know what the answer is. Like that's wonderful that they want that and they have that drive. But know that about them and know that, okay, so I'm not going to get a response when I say something, but it's there, so get to know them and know what works for them and the best way that you can be a parent for them. Because with parenting, you have all these ideas of how it's going to go, and then you start to do it. And it's humbling. You have to just be like, okay, like I was wrong on this. I did not handle this the right way. Like I need to think how I'm going to handle this better next time so that I can best serve my child and give them the tools that they are going to need based on who they are to tackle big, difficult things that they're going to encounter in the world.
Okay. So many wonderful pieces of advice there. And thank you for sharing. I mean, I'm actually even taking notes, like I really appreciate that. So thank you for sharing. And I want to touch on now kind of another piece of that, which is the partner aspect. You mentioned really needing to be on the same page with your partner when you're parenting children, especially, a strong-willed little person. And I'm curious if you can kind of share what that relationship journey has looked like to you. I mean, just like parenting has its ups and downs, like marriages do too. It's hard enough being a parent and you add that other person in there. And of course, there can be conflict or differences. And so I'm just curious what that relationship and that journey has looked like so that you two have come to this place where you feel like you're a united front.
Well, I mean, again, humbling is the word, I guess, because you have to be open to not having the right answer and not having the right approach at all times, and open to like, okay, you might feel like, okay, I know that this is how we should handle this, and I know that this is the right way. That may not be, and you have to be able to take a step back and listen to what your partner is saying because their view is valid, and even if it's different from yours. I mean, you have to have that open communication. You have to listen. You have to be humble and honest, And one of the things that my husband and I do well, I mean, it's not all the time, but we've been able to do well, and it just clicks for us, is that sometimes like my patience are not there and I'm going to lose it and I'm going to be furious and I'm going to yell and I'm going to handle the situation dead wrong and my emotions are going to get the best of me. And when that happens, he's calm and he can step in and be that voice for both of us, for myself, for my kids, whoever. And that's happened. And I've noticed it happen. It's like, well, when the reverse situation happens and when he's just done and he can't, it's my role at that point to step in and try to be the calm voice of reason, because it's hard. I mean, they always say it's like, well, you're the parent, you're the one who's supposed to guide and try to help your child not have these huge reactions or manage their emotions, and here you are losing it. It's like, because you're a human being too. And it's really helpful to have somebody else there who can kind of step in and be that voice for you when you can't do it because you're a human being.
And I want to honor a couple of things you said specifically in this question and the previous one, that in the moment you could be empowered with all the tools and ideas for best practices for meeting your child where they are, and yet you're still human and you still have your own emotions, and sometimes those can, in your words, get the best of you. Can you tell me about, I kind of want to follow up on this last question. You said that in order to co-create your own family values, you were able to kind of have an intentional discussion with your husband about what worked for you, what didn't, what worked for him in his upbringing, what didn't. Can you speak to some of the specific approaches you've used with both your kids, but specifically the strong-willed daughter? And honestly, we do this because we want to learn too, right? Like, what have you, like, how have you grown through the challenges of raising and getting to know your daughter and trying to meet her where she is? Like, what specific tactics or approaches have you used with success?
For each other?
For each other and for your daughter.
Okay.
I think the main thing is just to keep that line of communication open. I think sometimes as a mom, you want to protect your kid. Like, that's innate. And so sometimes it's hard to see where that fault is or to see the problem that your child is having, because you just want to protect them from that. And that's not always going to be the best thing to do. And so, I also think that as a father, innately, it's that role is a little bit different. And, we've just had to communicate and talk about that. Each one of us has a different skill set too when it comes to communication. My husband's very direct. And so if he sees something, he will say it. And sometimes I'm just like, oh no, like we have to make that sound nicer. So that's one thing I think for sure is just like the way we communicate, and it's understanding each other as well. But it's tough, but we're very rewarding, I think, in the end.
I think that's an understatement.
We were just talking about that this morning, actually, about how much of a challenge it can be, but how the juice is so worth the squeeze. It's like, especially with Emery, it's like, it can be so much, but when you find those ways that click to work with that child, or, in your case, young adult, it can feel so rewarding. And there is that little bit sometimes of the, okay, I am doing it right, as a parent of, and that connection of,
Yeah.
And I think that you spoke to the idea of humility and being able to admit that you don't always have the answer.
No.
And learning from
And honestly,
mistakes.
that's hard. That's hard to do. It's hard for people to admit when they are wrong, just in general. And I admit I have a problem with that. I mean, it's hard for me to do that sometimes. So I work on that. And like I said, my husband's very direct and he has no problem pointing it out, which is a good thing. It's a good thing. It's nice. It's good that he cares enough to just basically be like, no, like this is something that it would benefit everybody if it was handled differently. And he's right. So
yeah. We have a similar
but it's hard. It's hard to
pattern.
admit when you're wrong.
Yeah, we have a similar communication pattern. And, Tony, even if you are an expert in these things, like he has a master's in communication, I have a master's in conflict management, and we still get in fights. We still have conflict because that's just part of being human. And people do have different communication approaches. And so it really is, I think, and what you're speaking to as well, is like, it's just it can be so specific to those two people, and people do communicate differently, and it is such a balance and a dance of figuring out, how to make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that the last question in this segment speaks to that dance, that idea of navigating the being individuals, being a couple, and being a parent and having a family. Can you speak to some of the challenges that you've had as a parent balancing the commitments to getting back to work and preserving the intimate partnership with your husband, and maybe speak to some of the things that have worked to keep that connection between you two alive,
Sure.
especially as you've juggled so many balls?
Well, I have to say that having a supportive partner when you decide to make a significant change that impacts your entire family is number one. I didn't have to go find a job. And I didn't just like decide to wake up and do it one day. It kind of just progressed and happened naturally, which was great, actually. I mean, it provided a lot of learning along the way for it to happen that way. But it's hard. Like I said earlier, I don't know. I know how my daughter's getting home from school today. I haven't figured it out yet for tomorrow.
Yes.
We will figure it out at some point between now and then. For 9 years, I was a full-time stay-at-home mom, and my job was to get the kids where they needed to be, and along with other things as well. But that was never anything we needed to worry about because I could always handle it. And I was able to maintain that up until about, 7 months ago when I took the current position that I'm in right now. And he was supportive because he recognized the opportunity and was incredibly supportive from the very beginning and knew, like, no, this is something you really need to do. And that has been a game changer because I don't think I could do that because just emotionally, it's hard to go from being the number one parent and the one who manages that and will take care of it without no questions asked to sharing that role and having to ask people for help. It can be hard to do that. But again, like, we're in this together, we're a partner. We have a partnership, and having his support in that is all that makes all the difference in the world, for sure. So I can always get my son home. She's involved in a lot of after school activities, and
Kids
I don't
come
want
with
her
things,
to not.
right?
They do.
Yes.
I don't want her to not do the things that she loves because I decided to go take a job that I love. So we figure out a way to make it work. And so far
Everything
we
is
have.
figure-outable.
Yeah.
That is a
we can
mantra
get
in
it.
our house. Everything is figure outable.
It is. So it is. I mean, and it just sometimes you have to just let the pieces fall into place. There's a faith component to it. It's like, okay, it will work out. She's not going to sleep at school tomorrow. I mean. So, but yeah.
And can you speak, please, to the specific idea of the intimacy and the connection between you and your husband in lieu of all these changes and in lieu of the multiple conflicting priorities that you face individually? Like, one of the things we're talking about is making sure we have one date day a week and that we start or end our day with a check-in, maybe it be a meditation, breath work, or a yoga flow together. Or even just like a short conversation, to make sure, like, as you stated, we keep the lines of communication open. What have you done to make sure that you and your husband remain connected, even through all these changes and all the things that you have on your plate?
So one of the phrases you'll hear a lot in our house is either myself or my husband say to mostly our son, because he's younger and I guess just like is more wants things immediately, is I'm talking to dad right now. Or no, not now. I'm talking to mom. And so they know that when we are communicating, like that's what we're doing. And that's where our attention is. We also eat dinner together. At least he and I eat dinner together most nights because it's hectic and crazy. But we typically will wait for the other and eat together most nights in the middle of our kitchen island, sitting there, probably doing other different things. But that's something we do. And we have been making more of an effort to go to, or now, especially now that our daughter is 13 and can stay home with our son, we'll be like, let's go grab dinner Saturday night. And I'll like, all right, I just made us a reservation. So we don't do it every weekend. We can't, but we kind of make during the day. We typically do in the evenings at the end of the day. We check in with each other and it's usually over dinner. That's important. And we do prioritize that, when we are communicating and talking about something, then, and he comes in, Dad, did you know da 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 da? And he's like, not now, buddy. I'm talking to mom. I mean, and I
I
do the
love
same thing. It's
that.
like, we're not,
Yeah.
nope, Dad and I are talking. That's the priority right now. And that way, like, they learn that and they see that
Yes.
we are
Boundary
prioritizing
setting.
we are prioritizing that the fact that we are communicating together. And that's important right now. It's important for us to be able to continue that conversation, but it's also important for our kids to see that we prioritize that with each other. The other thing is
Absolutely.
that in front of our kids, we always have each other's back, always.
Yes.
More about that united front piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I love how you're kind of circling back to something that we really even just started our conversation with, which is, we started talking about how, your parents' relationship was and how it impacted you. And that is a constant piece as well, is that our kids are constantly learning from us, not just how to react with other people, but in particular, like potentially someday with their own partner too. And so I love that you're speaking to that and keeping that in mind. And I think that's a great takeaway, is like, how does my relationship with my partner potentially, like, what are my children seeing, or how does it reflect on them? So
Right.
thank you for sharing that, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think now that we understand a little bit more about your family, your background, I want to move to discuss what brought us together, which is our professional practice.
Yeah.
We think all three of us share collective aspiration to help people. And Amanda's putting together a course for postpartum women. And so I know that you two share a passion for helping women of all ages improve their strength and flexibility. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. So I'm curious, and I know Tony is too. We would love to maybe have you speak to what does strength mean to you, and how do you help people get stronger?
Well, I mean, I think that there's multiple meanings in that. So there's obviously physical strength, and that's, what we see, the physiology of it, like why it's important for women. If we want to anybody, but if we really want to get specific, why it's important for women to strength train on a consistent basis. But there's also the strength when it comes to like internal strength. So like your discipline, setting your routine, your habits, your overall wellness, like that's a component of strength as well. So I think that the two kind of go hand in hand, and it's easy to see the physical part of it, right? I mean, but that you can't do that and have success with that if you don't have the discipline and the routine and the overall wellness approach. And so they really are related. But I do think it's like a two-faceted concept, really.
Yeah. And I think that from my perspective, there's a vulnerability piece. There's an ability, and we've talked about this earlier, like part of being strong is admitting that you might not always have the right answer, being open to communicating about your feelings, and being, like, I like the phrase anti-fragile. The idea that if I get knocked down, I can get back up, and knowing that you have the internal fortitude and tools to find the joy or the lesson in each moment. One of my favorite quotes is, "Even the mightiest oak will be uprooted by the storm, but the blade of grass will bend in the wind and await the next moment of sunshine." And I think that relates to both the strength piece that we talked about, but also the belief that the mind and the body can only be as strong as it is flexible. You're a flexibility coach. Can you talk to us about the importance of maintaining flexibility as it relates to strength?
Absolutely. So, flexibility, it's gonna help you to increase your range of motion, right? So this is like the science of it. It's like a lot of people might want to, it's not necessarily the sexy part of of working out, but you increase your range of motion and flexibility. You're decreasing your risk of injury if you are working on your flexibility and increasing, trying to become more flexible. It helps you in preventing muscular imbalances and postural deviations, correcting postural deviations that a ton of us have that we don't even realize that we have.
As you're saying that, I'm like,
straightening my posture.
I know, right? I said, shoulders back,
right? Tuck that core.
right. But working with a flexibility coach and flexibility training does help with that, with postural deviations. It goes hand in hand. I mean, our body is meant to have a balance of tension, and that balance of tension is flexibility and strength. It's lengthening and strengthening muscles, right? So when we talk about the lengthening component, that's working on our flexibility. And every muscle has an there's an agonist and an antagonist, each one, and they have to work in concert. It's like your quads and your hamstrings. We live in a very quad dominant world, right? They're big muscles. You see them right there on the fronts of your legs. You know how many hamstring injuries there are, or hamstring tweaks, hamstring pulls. I'm in New Orleans. We're a Pelicans family here. We love the Pelicans. Zion Williamson is out for 3 weeks because of a hamstring pull in a game last week. And this is one of the, he's got access to anything he needs when it comes to his strength and flexibility and training, right? And he's out for 3 weeks with a hamstring pull. Our hamstrings never are like, so many people, I have tight hamstrings. I have tight. Yes, you do, because we have a very quad dominant society, and we have focused so much on strengthening and building up those quads. Our poor little hamstrings, they're not getting any love. And it's that opens you up to injury, right? Risk of injury. And you're going to you're going to be stronger. You're going to have better posture. You're not going to have muscular imbalances if you incorporate flexibility training into your strength training.
Can you talk about, I think that's beautiful. And I think that it's important that people take the awareness that not only will promoting flexibility improve your posture, reduce risk of injury, but it'll also involve you in an intimate relationship with your body. Like you'll get to know your body and the limitations and the weaknesses
100%.
and also connect to the breath, because part of stretching is really using the breath to expand the muscle tissue.
Absolutely.
But I want to speak specifically to the idea of fascia. Can you explain what that is and how our bodies hold on to physical and emotional traumas, and talk about how you help people release some of that?
So our fascia it's a connective tissue, and all of your bones, your nerves, your muscles, everything's embedded in fascia. And there are 10 different, some people call them fascial lines, some people call them fascial nets, but there are 10 different fascial lines in your body. And you kind of take an approach to, when we're talking about flexibility training, I'm not necessarily going to take an approach of saying like, oh, I'm going to make sure we stretch, your hamstring. I know I'm talking about hamstrings, but I'm not just going to stretch your hamstring. We're going to stretch your entire back neck, for example. And knowing how they're all related and it's all connected. One of the first things we learn when you're becoming a trainer, for example, is, about the kinetic chain, right? Everything is connected. Well, it's connected through fascia, and your fascia, is more and more research coming out that supports the notion that your fascia holds on to your past trauma, whether that's physical, whether you've had injuries or surgeries or just different things, or it could be emotional as well. And that when you can release some of that, you can feel that tension. That's one of the things that just like, it blew me away when I was studying this, and that, you'll be able to feel the tension and you can feel it when it's going to release. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? First time it happened, I was like, that's it. Amazing. And I remember the first time I did this with it was a friend, and there was that other things like, use your friends. They want to be stretched. So I had a friend. I was like, let me stretch you. Let me just, whatever. And I knew her past and I knew her history. First time it happened, and I looked at her and she looked at me, and I was like, you felt that? She's like, yeah, you felt it. I was like, yeah, I felt it. And the more you do it, the more you realize, you come to learn and recognize, I can tell you when when the muscle that I'm targeting is going to release, and I can tell you when it's not going to. And if you have a lot going on in your life at that time, you're busy, you're stressed, I can only do so much, because part of it is going to be on the other person to recognize and try to have to work through that. Now, I think that the stretching and the physically touching people is helpful. And I think that helps get people to make progress in terms of me being able to increase their range of motion of a joint or something. But that's another component to it as well, is the touch part, because we weren't allowed to touch for so long, right, during COVID. And then now it's like we're seeing some of the after effects of that. And now we are. And like and when you're stretching somebody, you have no choice but to touch them. And you touch them in a way that you can feel their tension, and you can feel when their tension is going to release, and you can tell them like, it's coming, like, just give me a minute, like, deep breath in, it's coming. Or I can say like, I'm not getting anywhere with this right now. And you just have to know, and you have to, again, communicate. I mean, that seems to be a theme we're running with, but it's important. It's so important. I mean, you have to communicate with your client. You're like, this is what I'm getting right now. And And they'll tell me like, oh, this isn't working for me, or this is painful. Or, I say, if anything hurts, you tell me. It's not going to hurt my feelings, but I need to know,
Mhm.
because we don't want to have pain associated with this, right? From the emotional and mental part of it. So
Yeah, and I think that's a metaphor that also applies to the physical, because your body is almost always communicating through your nervous system where you're experiencing pain. And if you're listening, you can adapt. If you're listening without judgment, you can adapt and then make changes without, a shame spiral. The same goes through emotional flexibility, right? The idea that we remain open, listen actively, and realize that our ego often gets in the way, and we can be flexible and adapt.
All right. So, kind of continuing on the idea that you were just speaking to, which is like a holistic practice. I know that historically you've talked about believing in a comprehensive training system.
mhm.
And so, just kind of continuing on that tangent, can you tell us a little bit more about what a comprehensive training program looks like to you, and how moms and dads can start to implement some of those things into their own life?
Absolutely. So I do think that I have my approach to training is, as you said, it's comprehensive. I have an acronym. It's mentor. I train mostly teenagers at this point, which is where my heart lies with this. Like, I love training teenage athletes, and that's mostly what I do. So I also kind of view it as like, okay, mentors are a great way for me to think about like what I'm trying to do with these kids. Mindset, nutrition, training, and recovery. MNTR. That's where I get mentor from.
Love that.
So they kind of all are related. They go hand in hand with, with mindset training. And I mean, that's talking about the things that maybe seem corny or not cool. It's like, you have to normalize that. It's like, no, let's talk about, are you journaling? How do you
Yeah.
feel about the fact that you have a really busy schedule next week? How are you handling that? I think that it's important to really get to know your clients. So again, like, I train mostly teenagers who are athletes. So I want to know like what their practice schedule is. I want to know what tests they have. I want to know when their school holidays are, when they go back to school, when they're off. I want to know these things about them, because that's part of them. And I want them to know that I am invested in who they are as a person and that I care. So then I set that out. And then I ask them, it's like, okay, so journaling is a great thing. So if you need any journaling prompts, let me know. If you don't know what you want to journal about, let me know. I'll give you some journaling prompts. Nutrition, okay, like, they're so related. I mean, you can't put the junk in and get something good out. And I think that the earlier we start talking to kids about this, the better, because
Yeah.
that is the way to change a family's eating habits, is for the kids to be interested and invested in it. So I talk to my clients about nutrition and make sure that they, are staying properly hydrated and they have a good source of protein after their workout. And I tell them these things, explain that carbohydrates are good for you, especially the
Yeah.
complex carbohydrates. It's like, to hear all these things. And I mean,
Yeah.
when it comes to nutrition, there's so much misinformation out there that I think it's important to try to keep it simple and to trust them enough to know, for them to trust that they know enough to understand how to properly, fuel their bodies. Training,
Yeah.
I mean, that's, obviously I'm a trainer. That's the bulk of what it is. That's the physical workouts. But I also explain why we're doing what we're doing. I'm not, if I have a basketball player, I'm not going to teach her how to shoot, right? That's not my job. My job is to prepare her body to be able to do that best. Right. So we'll talk about like, this is the muscle group that you're going to be using. So this is why we're going to do this. Just again, like, respect the kids enough to understand that they can get this. They're not stupid. They can understand how their own bodies work. It's their body, right? And then the
Right.
final one would be recovery. Again, we're seeing that pop up more and more, which is wonderful, because it is, if you don't recover well, then you can't turn around and do this again the next day. The
Sure.
people in general, I say these kids, adults, they feel like they can keep doing, it will catch up to you, and you have to recover. And there's a lot of options, and there's science out there and there's facilities and just different ways, sleep being one of the most important things of all, that they can do. They need to know how important this is, and to listen to their body and respect their body enough to actually recover well, so that you can then turn around and do this again. So that's kind of the
That's amazing.
comprehensive training model.
I love that. I think that's great. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And I want to touch on a particular piece that you mentioned, and I know you're passionate about it as well, and that's nutrition. I'd like to talk nutrition for just a minute, and I'm curious, what do you believe are some small changes that people can make to have a profound change on their energy, vitality, and also preventing disease?
Cut out the sugar, drink more water, eat more vegetables, and lean protein.
Awesome.
Very simple. I mean, it's more complicated than that. So cut out the sugar, then there's a lot of sugar substitutes out there. And then how do you choose the best one? Well, I have, my preference is monk fruit. I love monk fruit.
Yes.
Stevia is a strong second for me. And honestly, nothing else. Like, not doing it. If it says sucralose on it, it's going back on the shelf. I'm not buying it. I don't even want to have that in my house. This is a mantra I've been saying for years, but it's add another veggie. Seriously, to every single meal you prepare, you have in front of you, look at it and figure out a way to add one more plant to it. So either a vegetable or a fruit. You can grab a handful of berries. You can put, if you're having a salad, you can add, I buy the shredded carrots, handful of that in your salad. That's an extra vegetable you're adding in there. At dinner, like just put another vegetable. Whatever you have in front of you, somehow add another plant to it. Drink more water. So carry a reusable water bottle around with you and figure out how many times you need to fill it up in a day to get your goal, which should be half of your body weight in ounces, half of your body weight in pounds in ounces. So, and then as your minimum. And then what else did I say? I said, cut the sugar, eat more lean protein. Yeah, just not overwhelming. But if you're going to choose choose the ground beef that's leaner, cut off the fat in your chicken, things like that.
I love that because, I've done the meal prep thing for a little while with clients. And one of the things that they often come to me with is this idea of being overwhelmed, that like they can't have a whole bunch of stuff and they feel like they're limiting their diets. And the inverse is really true. It's like, especially once you open yourself up to a world of like vegetables and healthy grains, it's like, instead of thinking about what you can't eat, it's flipping into this thing of all of the amazing things that you can eat. And this idea of even like, what's another vegetable that I can add to my plate? And so that's a really great concept that you have too. I really like that. I want to highlight that for our listeners.
You have to think about it that way too. You have to think about it in that positive way, whether it's you're looking at your nutrition or you're thinking about, your workout. I mean, every single one of the pillars that I have in the comprehensive training model that I've come up with, it's not rocket science or anything. It just makes sense to me, right? Every single one of them, you have to think of it as a positive. Like, what can I eat? What else can I do in this workout? What else can I write in my journal? Who can I send a text to randomly to make their day? Or just to say, hi, I'm thinking about you. What can I do to feel better tomorrow? If I stretch for an extra 5 minutes, am I going to feel better tomorrow? Yes, you will. You have to think about it that way. Put that positive spin on it.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And I want to transition now to our final segment and kind of really focus on the specific programs that you have coming down the road. And so, first of all, we've had the pleasure of collaborating with you on a book this year. And we really found your chapter to be like particularly important and valuable. I'd like you to maybe share, why is it so important and inspiring for you to promote strength and flexibility for young ladies?
Well, I saw a need for it, honestly. There's been a lot of research out there about the rate at which girls are quitting playing sports. So a lot of girls will quit around the age of 14. That seems to be the age.
Wow.
And the reasons cited for that are a lack of role models in terms of professional athletes to look up to that are women, a lack of having professional coaches and trainers for them at that age. The facilities are not as nice as the facilities that the boys' sports have. Some body image issues, social issues, like are people going to call me, homosexual or whatever because I play sports? It's some of this stuff, and this is hard for girls to navigate. Am I going to be too masculine if I play soccer, or who knows? But there's so many things that are going on with teenage girls anyway, in terms of their bodies. Their bodies are changing. Their hormones are trying to figure things out, when you add in some of the social pressures on that, like it's not rocket science. It's not shocking to see that that they might not,
Yeah.
they might find like, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. I think that as a society, we've made a lot of progress, but there's still a long way to go. So I kind of saw a need for some programming that was designed specifically for girls in mind. And so with that, I kind of wrote about it a little bit. That's kind of where I came up with the mentor 4 pillars. That because I think that obviously like they apply to boys as well, but I think that they're particularly relevant to girls in terms of having something in this arena that is specifically for them. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's kind of where that
Everything's
came
been
from.
geared towards men for so long. It's nice to have
Has been.
something made just
Yeah.
for women. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
like we see it
I'm
too.
curious.
No, I was just saying that we see it. So where I work, I'm the strength and conditioning coach in a physical therapy clinic. We have a performance training division, and that's what I run. And we are overwhelmingly catering to girls because here in
Mm,
New Orleans we have a Catholic high school system. There's boys schools, a lot of boys schools and girls schools, and the boys programs include strength and conditioning. The girls programs do not. They might have athletic PE,
interesting.
just like the boys do, but the boys also have strength and conditioning. So where we are,
Interesting.
we're, a performance training gym. I've got girls coming in because this is where they're getting their strength and conditioning because it's not part of their program. It's not in the budget at their all girls private schools, but it is in the boys. So I see it in
Interesting.
practice daily.
And I'm curious, as a strength and conditioning coach who works with a lot of young women, I mean, as an adult, I think our world is just changing so much, especially in terms of social media, what we see, and kind of like a fake reality. I can only imagine what that effect must have on young girls, especially in our culture today. I'm curious, can you speak to, for our parents, maybe, like, what are some things that as parents you have found to be effective in terms of helping to empower women, and maybe like some techniques that you found or just some realizations that you've come to in working with young women?
The big thing that I really think makes a difference is that we don't underestimate what they understand. Don't underestimate that they can't get the science behind some of this. So for example, here's a great example, and I use this one pretty much daily. When you're there's some coaches and trainers who will be like, keep going, go, 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 push, push,
Ah,
one more, one more, one more. Right? When you're like totally fatigued out and there literally is no more energy in your muscle to do it, right? Like it's
yeah.
physically impossible. So what do? Like you end up like, straining and you're using, improper form and you're opening yourself up for injury because you can't quite do the exercise in the right way because you're literally fatigued out. You physically can't do it and you've got somebody yelling at you, keep going, you can do it, you can do it. That's not my approach at all. I take a very science-based approach to this. Because I understand what happens. Like I know the process of how your muscle creates energy. And when it's not there, it's not there. But this is the thing. You need a few seconds. Like you literally need a few seconds to stop and rest and then finish your reps. But you're doing them safely. You're going to get more out of it because you've let it's that chemical process in your muscles. You're to go from ATP to ADP, and that phosphate has connected with the creatine phosphate. It's come back around, and now it's ATP again, and it's ready to go. It takes seconds. So stop and take a few seconds of rest, and then finish your reps with proper form safely. You get more out of it. So I explain this to these kids, and I will tell them it's like it's ATP, adenosine triphosphate, ATP. You get that? They're like, yeah, I get it. It's like, well, then that one phosphate, like they get it. Then I'm like, okay, so one phosphate goes. That's the energy expending. Now you've got ADP, adenosine diphosphate. You get that? Yeah, I get that. Like, okay, well, that energy that's expended, it attaches to another molecule and it comes back around and combines to that ADP. So now what do you have? ATP again, right? So now you've got the energy to expend. That process takes a few seconds. I explain this to them. They get it. And my kids don't try to rush through they don't try to get, do reps when they're too fatigued to do it. They give themselves,
Yeah.
you see it all the time. They stop, take a rest, and then they go back into it. So I think that by valuing them enough as a person to take a few minutes to explain that to them is means a lot. It means a lot in terms of educating them, but it also means a lot in terms of, no, I trust you to know this about your body and to understand it. I trust that you do understand it. So that's something that I do with them. When it comes to nutrition, again, I don't sugarcoat it. I keep it very simple. I guess I shouldn't say sugarcoat, but I do. I keep it simple and tell them, like, make sure you get your protein after your workout. When we talk about our muscles, I tell them what they're called. I'm not going to say your thigh. I'm just like, no, it's your quad. It's like, I want them to know the actual names of the actual muscles in their own bodies. And I think that that's empowering for girls to be true, to talk to girls that way.
Sure.
I think that demonstrates that I have the faith that they can understand this, and that they will know what's going on with their own body. I think that's part of it. I'm not dumbing it down for them. Let's not do that, please.
Yeah. I love that. So what I'm hearing you say is regardless of the content or what the subject is, you're recognizing them as an intelligent young being and coming to them with the science or the research or whatever it may be to give them just like on the same level, I guess, that you're speaking to them.
Yeah, empower them to understand what's going on with their body and for them to make informed decisions.
Yeah,
they can.
Amazing. That's great.
Future leaders of our world, right? Like, empower them to be able to make decisions, please.
Yes, give them the tools.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Second, let's talk about any upcoming projects you have in your pipeline and how our audiences can find and engage with you online.
Oh, absolutely. So again, like I work currently, I run the strength and conditioning division of a performance training division of a physical therapy clinic here. We train teenage girls. That's an in-person, one-on-one, not really one-on-one, but it's in-person, face-to-face type of training. And but I do see that I could see the potential for an online program that can serve girls that are not specifically in our area that can come to train with us at the SPT gym. So that's something that I would like to do. I would like to create an online version of the training concept, the training model that we have. I actually do have an LLC already. So it's something that I'm working on. It's not my primary job or responsibility every day, but it is something that I would like to see come to fruition, where we could have an online community so that girls everywhere could have access to that mentor training training concept with mindset, nutrition, training, and recovery as the 4 pillars. So that's something that I would like to see happen soon. But I don't know. I mean, it's a side project right now for sure. But yeah, anybody in the New Orleans area, we would love to have you come train with us at SPT, South Shore Performance Training, at South Shore Physical Therapy. So you can find South Shore on Instagram at South Shore PT, and you can find me on Instagram at sarahstack.fitness. And I do have a website for the future online repository for training for girls. It's inthegamefitness.com. But again, like, that is a side project. That is something that I would love to see come to fruition, but it's not there right now.
That's wonderful. I think that it's so important as women who want to help empower people that, it's okay to have passion projects and other outlets, and especially for parents who might be listening and, something that you're saying that resonates with them and aren't in the New Orleans area, to be able to reach out to you. So thank you for sharing your personal contact information, as well as obviously, your professional. So thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I'm pretty good. I try to be good about responding to messages through Instagram. So that is a great way to reach me on my personal Instagram. And we do try to keep South Shore update there. We've got good stuff on there all the time. And In the Game Fitness is something that will be coming along, but it's like I said, it's a side project. It's a passion project for sure. I'd love to see that come to fruition one day. So, but we're taking that one day at a time right now.
That's wonderful. Well, I wish you all the luck in the world with that. It sounds like an amazing opportunity for people who would like to work with you.
Yeah.
And finally, I'd like to speak to anyone out there who is struggling to find time or space to move their bodies or inspiration to take care of themselves. Um, what is something that you'd like to leave our listeners with, maybe to encourage them?
You know what? Just do it. Just start. That's it. It doesn't have to be this huge thing. Just start. Just go for the walk, sign up for a class, find a friend and sign up for a class together. Just reach out to that trainer who you've been following, you think you might be the right person for you to work with. Just do something to start. It doesn't have to be huge and overwhelming. It can get huge and overwhelming if you let it, but it doesn't have to be like that. If you just take that initial step to just start it. Do something you like. Do something you enjoy. You know, if you enjoy pickleball, that's the big thing. I've never played before. But if you enjoy that, then do that. If you enjoy hiking, then take a friend and go hiking. That's something my husband and I do. We went last weekend. We took our kids, found a national park nearby, and we just went there and just like, let's see what we can find. Just start and find something you like, and then think about how it's gonna benefit you. But if you're a parent, it's gonna benefit your kids, and you find that outlet for you to do something that's going to help you to be healthier and to live a healthier lifestyle. You're going to set an example for your kids, and you're going to be able to parent better because you have an outlet, a physical outlet for all of the stresses and all of the emotions.
Yeah.
To have that, it help you be a better parent if you can do something active, you know. And again, it doesn't have to be hard. There's a lot of gyms that are women only, you know, go there. You know, I mean, if you find the right gym isn't going to judge, right? It's not going to judge you. It's not going to seek to make you feel inferior. They're going to welcome you with open arms into their family, and you're going to make so many friends, and people are going to cheer you on. They're going to be your biggest champions. Those places exist. They exist all over this country. You know, you just have to find it. And the only way you're going to find it is to look for it, right? So make that investment, because it is an investment, but it's an investment in you. It's an investment in your health, but it's an investment in your family. You owe it to them to do this for you, bottom line.
I love that. Thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time to speak with us, our listeners today. And I wish you all of the best of luck, obviously, in your current job with empowering those young women, keeping them safe and healthy and strong. And all the best of luck in your future passion projects as well. It was great to talk with you.
And this was great. I appreciate this. It's a great opportunity.
All right. Well, have a great rest of your day, Sarah. Thank you again.
You too.
Wow, what an episode. Thank you for listening. We hope you took some meaningful tools and skills that empower you to become your highest self in every way.
We also hope you'll help us spread our messages of solidarity, social support, and consciousness raising by subscribing to our YouTube channel @Mindful and Fit and offering us an honest 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts.
Doing so helps more people hear these important messages of love, healing, and becoming.
And as always, much love from the Johnson family. We hope you make today amazing.
Just like you.